So at 15, I started, my first job was actually in construction. I worked in a workshop, and this is building bespoke furniture. I didn't have any qualifications, but back home, as I said, one of my uncles, he's in construction, he builds everything. You can think of brickwork, chippy, electrician, he does it all. So I picked up all those skills as well. So when I came here, back to London actually, I was 15 in London, my first job, and working in as I said, a workshop, and my first job was earning £500 a week at 15.
Wow.
And at the time I was rich, you know. But then I remember particularly a job that I'd done. I created a bespoke piece, like a wall unit that went over an archway and everything. Got paid £2,000 to do it at the time. And the client at the time, stopped me about a week later. She's like, "Oh my gosh, that piece you made, everybody talks about it. It's like, just grabs everyone's attention. And I only paid £25. I said, 25? This guy's robbed me." So me not understanding business at the time, realizing I'm working for somebody, I thought he had robbed me of my money. So when I approached him, you know, I was about 16 at this time, at that time, and he explained to me, "No, this is how business works. You work for me. That's my client. I pay you a salary, so for so on." And that's when I was like, "Oh, I need to work for myself.
Okay.
I want that 25k. I don't want any cent." And then, to be fair to him, is a guy named Sean. He basically sent me to college. I got qualified City and Guilds as a company joiner within 6 months. And then I started my own construction company doing shop fits. I always had this thing of, well, I want to travel now. And I couldn't travel when I wanted to because I didn't have the capital to travel. I want to go and see my dad now. I want to go and see my mum now. And so I had a kind of, probably at the time not knowing, but I had this desire to make more money so that I can do things that I wanted to. So I always knew that down the line I would be self-sufficient, but I didn't know what that looked like at the time. I wanted to be a footballer. I think I was 18 or 19. I went on trial to Birmingham City.
Oh really?
Yeah, I went on trial to Birmingham City, done well there. Didn't get a contract at the time, but then I was at another team. I went to Carlisle. They really liked me. It was pre-season. Went and played in a game, Oxford versus Luton, and a guy 2-footed me from behind, snapped my Achilles.
Oh yeah.
So we had COVID-19. We had lockdowns. Two of my major clients, even though they were councils, filed for bankruptcy and were in administration. And I had a massive outstanding invoices with them. So massive impact on the company. One of our brokers called up and said, "Just to let you know, your account's been blown." Significant 7 figures. And I said, "How's that possible?" "Oh, we assigned a new trader to the account and there was some complications and the account blew within 3 days." So then I got hit in business. I got hit in my essentially life earnings.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I stopped for about 3-4 days. And then I had an epiphany. I said, "Look, you've been trading yourself, not the volumes that, you know, a hedge fund would or brokerage would, but you have a decent win rate. Why don't you just take control?" And I promised myself from that day, I said, "I'll never put my faith, my health, or my finances in anybody else's hands again."
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against Our Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your accidental podcaster, and our guests in the studio this week,
Naithan Hilaire, founder of the One Day Trader.
Yep. Nathan is someone I've recently become acquainted with, and he has an amazing story. Nathan, welcome to Against Our Odds.
Thank you for having me.
Nathan, so you were born in the UK.
Correct.
Of St. Lucian heritage.
Correct.
And you had a very interesting upbringing.
Yes.
On a farm. Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favour. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
Yeah, so I grew up with my grandparents, so my mother and my father had me young. Just traditionally when young adults have a child so early is how my family have done things. They just take in the child and allow the parents to still live their life. So I grew up with my grandparents, as you said, St. Lucian heritage. And essentially my grandparents were entrepreneurs. They wasn't educated, so they didn't read or write.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
They didn't read or write. So they're the generation that they was born in, it was all about labour. So they're the first generation when you think of like Windrush and all these things. So they had a farm. My grandmother had a bakery. She had a seaming company as well. So they used to make and design clothes and dresses and wedding gowns and suits. So my typical day would be waking up, going to the farm, 5 a.m, collecting produce to bring to the market, selling those produce or bringing whatever was left home. Then I would leave that. I would then go to my grandmother's bakery because she would make cakes and bread and everything of that nature. Then when I would get home, I would help her with seaming clothes. So a lot of my aunties, they all seam clothes as well. So I generally grew up in kind of a entrepreneurial environment, and education wasn't at the forefront of my upbringing. So I spent most of my childhood with my grandparents.
And one of them had a car, an automotive.
Yeah, so my grandfather,
garage.
automotive shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, I've done my research.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
But it's quite interesting because there must have been some values that were instilled in you because, and we're going to talk about that shortly. But then I've found ever since I started this podcast and having people come on the show, that a lot of people developed certain values very early on, and it sounds like, in your case, you must have picked something up from your grandparents.
100%. I mean, first of all, they're old school.
Mm-hmm.
So discipline is a must.
Mm-hmm.
They're very faith-based. So everything was faith was at the forefront of our way of life. But it was more around resourcefulness, making most of what you have, obviously. It was about working hard. So my grandparents didn't know to work smart. They knew how to work hard.
Right, okay.
So working hard was kind of the bare minimum. But, as I grew older, I started to realize and appreciate actually with simple things like having a system in place that works, something that you consistently do on a day-to-day basis, and that would get the results and the continuous results as well. Resilience, being able to go through hardship. And it's crazy in the Western world, when you're over here in the UK, they tell you, everybody in the Caribbean or Africa or whatever, they don't have anything, but yet they leave here to go and live in those countries. Yeah. They buy the land in those countries that we already have. They buy the houses and that lifestyle that we already have. So it's only having that kind of, that understanding the difference from living in both, the Caribbean and here in the UK, is realizing actually I appreciate the foundations that I got from my grandparents, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what stage did you come back to the United Kingdom, and what was your upbringing like over here in terms of education and all that? So
I missed majority of school. Most of the education I got was self-taught, so my family, particularly my parents and aunties and so forth, they would give me books. They would send me books from everywhere. I had, key stage books, where you would go through the theoretical side of things, and then you do self-assessment as well, and you do questionnaires and all these things. So I spent most of my childhood self-teaching.
Wow.
And because my grandparents couldn't read or write, I didn't have much to lean on either. But I did end up going to school, and I left school with 9 C grades, which wasn't expected of me. And from there, essentially, it was just really about
surviving.
That's how it was. So my grandfather, what happened was my grandfather passed away when I was 15, so he passed away in 2002, Christmas Day. And my grandmother made a decision to come back to the UK to live permanently among her children and relatives. So she has, relatives, sisters and that here as well. And yeah, like for me, education, as much as I was naturally intelligent and I could pick things, I'm a very quick learner. So I can learn something, read it once and apply it almost instantaneously. But it was the freedom of working for yourself. So I watched my grandparents. They didn't work for somebody per se. It was, they had their own businesses, they had their own land, they had their own house and everything. So they owned everything for themselves. So they can kind of dictate when they would travel and when they would take time from, when they would apply the work ethic. So at 15, I started, my first job was actually in construction. I worked in a workshop, and this is building bespoke furniture. I didn't have any qualifications, but back home, as I said, one of my uncles, he's in construction, he builds everything. You can think of brickwork, chippy, electrician, he does it all. So I picked up all those skills as well. So when I came here, back to London actually, I was 15 in London, my first job, and working in as I said, a workshop, and my first job I was earning £500 a week at 15.
Wow.
And at the time I was rich. Back in those days, £500 a week at 15.
A lot of money.
So I was, not having that kind of access to money. I was buying my family everything, sneakers, clothes, you name it, spending frivolously. But then I remember particularly a job that I'd done. I created a bespoke piece, like a wall unit that went over an archway and everything. Got paid £2,000 to do it at the time. And the client at the time stopped me about a week later. She's like, oh my gosh, that piece you made, everybody talks about it. It's like, just grabs everyone's attention. And I only paid 25 grand. I said, 25? This guy's robbed me. So me not understanding business at the time, realizing I'm working for somebody, I thought he had robbed me of my money. So when I approached him, I was about 16 at this time, at that time, and he explained to me, no, this is how business works. You work for me. That's my client. I pay you a salary. So and that's when I was like, oh, I need to work for myself.
Okay.
I want that 25k. I don't want any cent. And then, to be fair to him, there's a guy named Sean. He basically sent me to college. I got qualified City and Guilds as a company joiner within 6 months, because I already had the experience. They just said you have to go through the theory, put me through my paces. Was qualified through City and Guilds in just over 6 months. And then I started my own construction company doing shop fits. I worked for a company at first, subcontracting D&C shop fitters in Luton. And we was doing shop fits up and down Oxford Street, McDonald's, Accessorize, Tesco's, and then I set up my own and continued that on till about 24.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, did you ever in your wildest dreams, see yourself as being as successful as you were at that young age?
To be honest, at the time, I've always had high ambition for myself. As much as I come from humble beginnings, my family are very competitive. My grandmother always dressed us in the best. Like I said, she used to make clothes. My aunties also used to make clothes. So when we stepped out looking like a million.
Sharp.
Yeah, we looked at sharp. So for me, I think it's more a case of I wanted to be close with my siblings and my parents and my cousins and so forth. But because I was kind of sheltered and I was raised by my grandparents, I always had this thing of, well, I want to travel now, and I couldn't travel when I wanted to because I didn't have the capital to travel. I want to go and see my dad now. I want to go and see my mum now. And so I had a kind of, probably at the time not knowing, but I had this desire to make more money so that I can do things that I wanted to. So I always knew that down the line I would be self-sufficient, but I didn't know what that looked like at the time. I just knew I would make it happen.
So you evolved from the the shop fitting space and did something really, really crazy, right? Because you're telling me, I mean, obviously before the shoot we had a conversation and you got involved in trading,
Yes.
you know, and I don't get it. Somebody who started out life on a farm, self-taught, had some City and Guilds qualifications as a joiner, shop fitter. What on earth? What on earth were you doing trading?
Well, I'll take it back even further. So
Okay.
when I done my City and Guilds trading, and I started working in shop fitting, shop fits with contracts with likes of McDonald's, Tesco's, they give you like a window, like 48 hours, and you have to complete. So you will literally work 38 hours, no rest, no nothing. And as a young man, I wasn't seeing no relatives, wasn't seeing at the time my girlfriend, nothing. And it was just, for me, that wasn't the life I wanted. As much as I was making good money, it wasn't the life I wanted. So I studied anatomy and physiology, sports injury science, and Swedish massage. So I went back to college.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
I wanted to be a footballer.
Okay.
I wanted to be a footballer. At 18, 19, I wanted to be a footballer. So I actually started playing football when I was like 16, 17. I didn't start from a young age like most people. I was really fast. And one of the things, again, me understanding the body, if I do something, I want to do it all, like to the fullest. I want to know everything about it. I want to be the best. So injuries plague most athletes. So I wanted to understand the body so that when I'm injured, I could recover and know exactly what's going on without having to rely on somebody else. So I went and studied anatomy and physiology, sports injury science, Swedish massage, personal training, and done that for 2.5 years. Got qualified, and I think I was 18 or 19. I went on trial to Birmingham City.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went on trial to Birmingham City. Done well there. Didn't get a contract at the time, but then I was at another team. I went to Carlisle. They really liked me. It was pre-season. Went and played in a game, Oxford versus Luton, and a guy 2-footed me from behind, snapped my Achilles.
Oh dear.
So I had to rethink, what do I want to do now? So I went into, funny enough, I was doing personal training in the gym for 2 years, and even though, because my qualifications, I could be a PT and a sports nutritionist, it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't making enough money, it wasn't giving me the lifestyle I wanted. And then I always heard about recruitment. A lot of people make loads of money in recruitment, so I went and worked for a company called Manpower.
Okay, I know Manpower, yeah.
Worked for Manpower for a year and a half, was making good commission there. There was an incident that happened in the office that just led me to say, hold on, again, I'm under the control of everybody else. I'm being treated a certain way that I wasn't comfortable with, and I just decided I'm going to set up my own recruitment agency. So I set up my own recruitment agency at 24, I think it was. I set up Davil Group, and I literally secured contracts with Sky, Barclays, White Clark Group, Advanced Business Solutions, Unit, like top companies, top companies. And I was making good money. But because as I said, I learned my lesson previously, I was spending frivolously when I was younger. I was into name brand, all these things, because I didn't value myself. I didn't understand the value I was bringing. So I was, kind of shallow. I would say I was shallow at one point, buying, not just for myself. I've always been humble, I've always, had manners and all those things, but I would look for material things to show people, oh, look what I'm doing, and I attract attention to myself. And then, I was making money and I was saving it in a hedge fund.
Oh, okay.
Saving all my money in a hedge fund, putting in a hedge fund, and it's building. And we had 2008, the crash, then 2012, the crash. And my recruitment agency didn't do as well as expected, but I was approached by James Khan, which is a dragon. He's got a company called Recruitment Entrepreneur, and they approached me and said, look, we would like to do a partnership with you. because your recommendation is obviously getting the right attraction, you're getting all these clients. At the time, me again, still in a bit of my ego phase, young man, I was like, if they're interested in me and they want to take a massive sharehold in my company, I must be doing something. I could do it on my own. And as I said, the crash came, set me back, so we had to dissolve the company. And I just basically went through a phase of, I had a major breakup, somebody I was with for almost 12 years, and I just had to rethink my whole life. So I went traveling for a year and a half, traveled everywhere. For a year and a half, I was on the road the whole time, in hotels, again, using money, but I just wanted to explore, experience life, traveling, and then have a reset. And then I came back to London, and I set up a construction company to work with local authorities, identifying, supporting them with mothers fleeing domestic violence and asylum seekers and people sleeping rough. So I would provide, support them with their temporary accommodation and provide integrated appliances, temporary mattresses or contract beds, and then that developed into me identifying void buildings and then turning them into affordable housing and mixed use. So again, in support of affordable housing for mothers fleeing domestic violence, asylum seekers, or young adults sleeping rough. And we had COVID-19, we had lockdowns. Two of my major clients, even though they were councils, filed for bankruptcy and were in administration, and I had a massive outstanding invoices with them. So massive impact on the company. And then lockdown was here. I was trading small, £10,000, £15,000 in the Forex market from 2016. I traded with loads of different so-called gurus, academies, experts, and I kept arriving at the same question: why, if I'm using your strategy, am I losing money? I would sit down with them and say to them, I've gone through the steps, I'll trade with them live, and they couldn't explain to me why I was losing money. They say, that's just what happens in the market sometimes. You can't expect to always win. And then I'll ask things like, can you show me your trading accounts? And most of them were like, no. So for me, then it was, okay, you're providing this education, but are you actually
doing it?
A successful trader? Because anybody can talk about trading and investing, but where's your investment portfolio? Where's your trading portfolio? Where's your results and outcomes? What broker are you using? So all these questions started to breed skepticism. You don't have results. Your strategy doesn't work. Or if it does, it's only for a small period of time. So in 2020, with the lockdowns, so I had the councils going into administration and bankruptcy, and one of our brokers called up and said, just to let you know, your account's been blown, and I'll show you the value of the account. But significant 7 figures. And I said, how's that possible? Oh, we assigned a new trader to the account, and there was some complications and the account blew within 3 days. Bearing in mind, I'd been with them for about 4 years at this point, and the account was performing month after month after month. So then I got hit in business, I got hit in my essentially life earnings, and I just, I'm not gonna lie, I stopped for about 3-4 days, head down, saying world's over, all of that type of stuff. And then I had an epiphany. I said, look, you've been trading yourself, not the volumes that a hedge fund would or brokerage would, but you have a decent win rate. Why don't you just take control? And I promised myself from that day, I said, I'll never put my faith, my health, or my finances in anybody else's hands again. And then I was basically started to go to the platforms, the academies and the gurus, go on their platform, and I started to debunk them. I started to show, myth bust and say, look, this person, I'll trade live with them for the month, let's see whose results come out better. And then I started to build a reputation on these different platforms of people saying, oh, this guy's actually a real trader, he's getting results. And then when 2020, it was around August, I was approached by about a dozen or so people, and they said, look, can you teach us what you're doing because we can see you know how to make money. Can you set up your own academy? And then I basically was compelled to start working with these people, and so I piloted the program from 2023, January 2023 to 2024, end of 2023, sorry, December, with 150 people from the UK. Had people from the Caribbean as well, and the States, China, Africa as well, but main cohort was in the UK, 150 cohort, and they were making money. And the community was thriving. It was vibrant. We was helping each other. There was success rate. The company itself generated multiple six figures in the pilot phase. This is before minimal viable product. So at this moment, I don't have any staff. I don't have a platform. I have no social media, no website for it. I have no resources other than the knowledge that I have. So I'm putting the knowledge down on paper into PowerPoints. But then we're going through the sessions, then we're looking at the live market, and where a lot of people found kind of the value was me trading live. So they can see this guy's really trading live in the market, he's doing his analysis, and he's not back testing, he's forward testing. So what he's doing is placing a trade in the market, and we're getting to see the real outcome. Whereas a lot of educators, they talk about what happened historically. And my strategy works because look, historically this, and this. Okay, what does it look like moving forward in the live market? So, and then from there, we created a waiting list, and within the first month of launching the waiting list, we have 2,000 people on the waiting list, and it currently stands at 6,000 people waiting to join us in June.
That is an amazing story and an amazing problem to have.
Yes.
6,000 people waiting to be let through the door.
Correct.
And you're profitable from day one.
Profitable from day one, unexpectedly, but that brought a number of different problems itself. So when it comes to the financial space, as you know, you're an accountant, regulation comes into play. To get around the regulation, I can't be an advisor because I'm not qualified, or a chartered accountant, or a lawyer, or so forth. So my way around it was, how do I get the same value and the knowledge that I have to my audience within regulation? So I started to partner with banks. And so when it comes to credit repair, I had experts from Lloyd's, VEM Group, Halifax, talk to our community and teach them how to build and leverage credit, how to get into a hedge fund, how to manage a junior ISA, all these different things. Then we start to work with brokers and partner with brokers. So now I have experts from brokers from Goldman Sachs, Hargreaves Lansdown and so forth, who are providing masterclasses to our community. And that's how I got around the regulation. And so now the platform will extrapolate all that knowledge from our experts. It's going into modules and courses depending on what sector you're in. So if you want to learn just how to build and leverage credit, it's there for you, and you have access to those masterclasses, but also live Q&As as well, and workshops. Whether you want to learn how to trade forex, crypto, stocks, you have those experts. If you want to get into mutual investments with like REITs, so you earn a fraction of a property, for instance, HMOs, we have those experts, but also modules that you can go through. So essentially our platform is a one-stop shop for everyday people at an affordable price to access and build their financial well-being.
Wow. I'm really impressed. So would you say that your early experience growing up, where you had to self-learn, probably led you to develop an inquisitive mind?
100%.
Understand things. Because just listening to you, I can see how there's a common thread, from when you're a child, to asking these so-called experts. Because many people will say, oh, this person's an expert, I can't ask them. And some people kind of react negatively when they're asked questions. Can you explain this? Can you show us your trading accounts?
Exactly.
But if you're really doing as well as you claim to be doing, then there's no problem showing your trading accounts.
Exactly that.
So it seems like your past experience kind of helped you in that regard.
Definitely. I mean, as I said, my grandparents are Caribbean. They're full on. So there's no hiding in a Caribbean household. There's everything straight talking. It's very direct. It's done with love, don't get me wrong, but everything's direct. So I grew up with that. If I have a question and you're an expert, you should be able to provide an answer. And if you can't provide an answer, I need to understand why. You can't be smoking and mirror screens. You know, I need to understand, why do you not know this and you're an expert? Okay, it may just be that you need to do more work on development. That may be your area of development that you need to work on. But for me, I've always wanted to be self-sufficient. As I said, from a young age, having to rely on other people when I could buy things, when I could travel, when I could do things, that as going into adulthood, I said that's never going to be my life. So if I'm trying to learn from you, it's because I need to extract that information so that I no longer need you, and I can move on. And it's not to say to use people, it's knowledge should be passed down. At the end of the day, for me, knowledge is power. And at the end of the day, if you're an expert, and I do this myself, I mentor over 200 students.
Wow.
Okay, so for me, there's nothing more fulfilling than imparting knowledge on a youth or the next generation and seeing them apply that knowledge and thrive. There's nothing more fulfilling than that. So to answer your question, yes, I've had it from day one, this kind of self-sufficiency to self-learn. And for me, everybody should have access to information, especially financial, anything health related. Just like faith, religion is accessible and it's free to everybody, finance and financial knowledge financial education should be accessible to all. Because at the end of the day, that's what runs the economy. Finance runs the economy. So why is it so niche? Why is it finance in itself? It doesn't matter what sector you go in, you're an accountant, you understand what I mean when I say this. There is so much technical jargon when actually it could be explained so simply, but it's purposely done that way so that people say, oh, that's too, I don't want to do it. Let me hire an accountant. Let me hire a broker. Let me hire do you understand me? The One Day Trader platform essentially has simplified everything, every space, every sector to do with finance, so that everyday people can pick it up and apply it. And it's also developed with AI, so it identifies your areas of development, areas of weakness, and then it will work with you to develop those gaps in your education. But then it will also advise, provide mentors or suggest a advisor that you can work with to basically
cover that gap.
Cover that gap.
Okay.
Exactly.
So as a taster to our viewers who are watching, okay, can you just tell us the very summarized format to someone who's watching, maybe has bad credit, how to repay the credit?
So this is not financial advice.
Yeah.
But to repay your credit, the first thing you can do is identify what your overheads are and what your income is. And then the most common thing or the easiest step to take is to pull back on your spending. So most people who are in a low income household naturally spend more than they can afford. So essentially what you want to do is identify your spending habits, identify what your monthly overheads are, and then tick off anything that's not essential. So that could be going out every month and spending £200 for the month. That could be
having coffee every day. That could be whatever your habits are. And it's only pulling it back for a month, because for 12 months, and you'll see a massive improvement in your credit score. So I would say identify what your spending habits are, your overheads are, and then make sure that you are living within your means. That's number one. Number two, understanding your credit score. So getting your credit report up, understanding what's on your credit report. So if you've defaulted, if you missed payments, if there's anything you can challenge. So if there are things on your credit report, and you can use, like I said, you can speak to your bank, you can speak to a credit advisor, they can help you with these kind of things, and getting any negative marks against your credit file removed. That's another thing you can do. Then it's
if you have a credit facility like a credit card, you don't want to spend any more you want to spend between 10 and 29. People say 30, but we want to stay within 10 to 29% of the overall balance.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you have a £1,000 credit card,
Yeah.
you don't want to spend no more than £100 to £290 on that credit card facility, because what it shows is that you are not dependent on a credit facility and you're using and managing it correctly. Every 3 to 6 months, whoever provided that credit card to you will assess your use of that credit facility, and then they will determine whether they should increase or decrease your overall balance.
Yeah.
So if you do that for 3 to 6 months, that will play a major role in improving your credit. There are things for people who do have bad credit. There are credit builders. Your banks, most high street banks offer credit builder facilities, but then there are independent ones like Lockbox. So Lockbox, basically, you commit to, I think it's £20 or £200 a month, and it's almost like you're saving with them. But what they have done is they've actually opened up a line of credit, and you're committing to those payments, those monthly payments. And once you do that for 12 months, they give you that lump sum that you saved back, or you can continue the process. Okay. So that helps towards building your credit as well. If you don't have credit at all, well, in fact, I'll stay with the people that have bad credit for now. Another thing is if you do have access to credit card facilities and you don't have 0% interest, transfer those high APR credit cards into a 0% interest credit card facility, because that will save you in costs as well. So those are a few tips I would say around the credit side.
So are you saying then that if, for instance, obviously you have a credit card, your advice would be to spend on that credit card up to that 10 to 15%?
I would say stay within 10 and 29%.
10 to 29%?
Yep.
But then pay it off like on a monthly basis.
Correct.
So that it just keeps taking over.
Definitely. So there's two things you need to take into consideration. So number one is identifying. So if you have a credit card, for instance, with Lloyds Bank, Lloyds will report to the credit bureaus, whether that's your Experian, TransUnion, you name it. So there's three. They have a specific date that they report to the credit bureau. So let's say it was the 18th. You need to make sure that balance is paid off 3 business days before that, because your payment needs to clear first, and then your credit file needs to demonstrate that yes, you used 10 to 25% or whatever else it is, but you've then cleared that within the time so that it reflects on your credit file. And if you keep doing that, your credit score will improve. So the higher your credit score, the lower interest you pay, and the more access to facilities you have as well.
Yes, I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and he was basically talking about index funds.
Yeah.
Debo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debo and Asakito, yeah.
Shout out Debo.
Yes.
And he's one of the good guys.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I was actually quite intrigued that, a key attribute to wealth creation, listening to him, listening to you, is discipline.
100%.
It sounds like that's the starting point. You've got to be disciplined to rein in the excessive expenditure. You've got to be disciplined to commit to some kind of a plan. You've got to be disciplined to learn about what's out there, that you could be putting your money into. And then stick with it. You've got to be resilient. You've got to be disciplined to ride the storm, because you will have ups, you have downs. So it sounds like discipline is a very key attribute. Now, my question to you is a bit like going to the gym. And again, you've been a personal trainer before. Are you suggesting that being in a community like yours, where you have accountability partners, helps in that regard? Because if somebody's watching you and somebody's keeping track of what you're doing, it's less likely that you're going to fall out of that discipline than it would be if no one's in your stuff and you're still kind of secretly buying stuff and stuffing under your bed.
Let me answer that twofold. Discipline is the key, but I'm going to touch on the discipline after this point. First of all is the knowledge. You are ignorant to what you don't know. It's when you know something and you know better, then it becomes arrogance when you're doing the wrong thing. But we are not taught financial education. So we are going to do the wrong thing because you don't know otherwise until somebody teaches you that. When you speak to, if you use just a, let's just take South London. If I was to go around South London right now in the communities that people that look like us come from, and I say to them, have you ever received any financial education before? That's from young right up to adults. They'll be like, no, actually, no. Do you know what a credit file is? Do you know what a credit, how to build your credit? They don't know any of these things. So therefore, how can you do the right thing? How can you be disciplined? So the first thing is knowledge. The education is vital. So like you said, with Debadon, Stock Pickers Academy, they're doing amazing things. With the One Day Trader, it's all about that education, not just in investing, but in your spending habits, your whole wealth management. Okay? But the discipline side, with the community, there's peer-to-peer learning.
Okay.
There's accountability partners. So you may be at a different stage to somebody else, but because you're in this massive community, you may put a question in the community, because we encourage this. We encourage people to put questions in, and the other thing that we make sure is that nobody's, kind of frowns upon newcomers and people who don't understand. It's really community building environment. So if you had an area of development or a gap in your knowledge, and you put that out in the community, there's break-off rooms. And then you and however many people can go and now discuss with an advisor. So as I said, we have right now experts from different financial institutions who will then say, hey, my availability is Friday, or you can look up their Calendly and it'll show their availability, and then you can jump on that specific session that's going to answer your question.
Right. Okay.
Do you understand me?
Yeah.
So and then what happens is we do hold, so for instance, even within a trading, so if we put you on a credit building plan, for instance, you're expected to submit your reports every, fortnightly. You're expected to submit your work online will be assessed fortnightly to see, are you going through the content that's required for you to build that knowledge base.
Okay.
So the educators and the advisors will hold you accountable, but also your peers will hold you accountable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's very structured, and it kind of helps to perpetuate that required discipline.
Definitely.
Yeah. Another thing I know you're involved with as we come to wrap up this conversation is I know you're involved with some charities and all that, educating sort of hundreds of schools across London.
Correct.
Just tell us a little bit about that.
So I can tell you about this partnership. I can't speak about the ones I've partnered with banks and brokers, but we've recently partnered with the Peter Johns Foundation. Okay. We provide financial education and communication skills and leadership skills to 111 schools across London.
Wow.
And that's essentially to raise their financial acumen and expose them to what they should be preparing for as they progress into adulthood. Yes.
Right. So how does somebody who's watching this podcast find out more about the One Day Trader?
Okay, so we're launching in June, officially launching in June. This is where everything's automated, all online, so you can work at your own pace and everything else. But on socials, it is _1 day, so that's one, the number, day _trader. So the number 1 day _trader.
Yeah, we'll put it in the comment section below.
And then you can also visit the website, which is just www.theonedaytrader.com. And then LinkedIn is myself, Naithan Hilaire.
Fantastic. Nathan, what do you think of this podcast and what we're trying to do?
Do you know something? I love what you stand for. I love the fact that you're bringing exposure to the diaspora. And to be honest, I showed my wife this. She's like, it's beautiful. Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, very, very welcoming, very relaxing environment. Great host.
Yeah, it's been a privilege having you on our show. We have a tradition of this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they're featured on. to anyone of their choice. So who would you like to dedicate today's episode to? And you can look at the camera for that.
I would have to dedicate this episode firstly to my wife, because she's... That's okay.
Can you do that again?
Yeah. I would have to firstly dedicate this episode to my wife, because she stood by me through thick and thin, through the ups and downs, through COVID-19 lockdowns, through everything. But secondly, definitely to my community. My community have been patient, and they've literally helped me navigate through the ups and downs of putting this platform together. So definitely my wife and my community for sure.
Fantastic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd like to like the video, comment, share, and subscribe. Because the bigger the platform gets, the easier it will be to keep bringing you such amazing stories as we've just heard today. So thank you very much, and see you next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.